Hi guys, today I just thought I'd blab a little bit on a topic that I think has affected pretty much all of us at some point, and it's certainly something that I'm going through at this particular moment, and that's how to stay motivated and focused in your uh, painting, how to keep going on, your projects. So I thought I would kind of share some techniques that I've used before to sort of deal with that problem. And this is by no means a comprehensive list or anything, but these things have helped me. So I'm hoping maybe some of you can get a little bit of use out of them as well. Sometimes it can be helpful just to approach your painting from a totally different perspective. And one way I do that is by turning the whole thing into a game. Now, you're probably going to want some examples of how to do this. One thing you can try is to kind of build in this element of challenge. It's going to be artificial, but it can really work. So, for example, you could say, I'm only going to paint these units using 4 pre-selected paint colors and see how that works out. Or this unit I have to have done in an hour or half an hour or whatever. So you're making it like a game because you're setting these challenges, these sort of obstacles that you have to overcome. And that can make the process a lot more interesting and varied. The other way that I sometimes make my painting into a game is I set rewards for myself or incentives. And no, I don't mean that like after I paint a unit, I go out and eat an ice cream cone, but you can do that too if it works for you. What I do, and I'll give you an example, is I will try to sort of vary my painting process in a way that keeps me interested. And this works really, really well, especially when you've got a big army you have to paint or a big project, lots of figures. So I'll start out with sort of a boring unit, maybe a lot of soldiers in it, monotonous uniforms, difficult, just not something I'm looking forward to painting. And I'll do that first, and I'll force myself through it. But I'll kind of say, okay, when I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and paint something that I've been really looking forward to. So a general or a vehicle, something that's really inspiring, really cool equipment. Just I know there's a lot of possibilities for a cool paint job, and I just really want to do it. So I'll just say, when I finish this boring stuff, I get to do something really, really fun, kind of as a reward. But it's also something that involves painting, so I'm continuing to sort of make progress towards my goal at the same time. And with a big army, I would just kind of alternate back and forth. So I do something fun and then I finish again with something boring, go back to something fun. Just keep going like that until I'm all done. And it's easier to stay motivated because there's always, something kind of to look forward to down the road. Now, this one is particularly true if you're working on a lot of models, and sometimes when you've got a big project looming up, it can seem really daunting and overwhelming, just the mass of lead that you have to paint, and you just don't even really want to get started. And in that situation, sometimes trying to really just break things down and think really small can be helpful. So, what I mean by that is, you know, you don't probably want to think about sitting down and painting, 10 guys from start to finish. But what you need to do kind of in your mind to say, okay, I've got maybe 20 guys or 10 guys or whatever. And today I'm just going to paint all of those shoes. That's it. Or just choose something really, really small. Don't even choose like pants or jackets or something like that to start. Just say, I'm going to paint all their shoes, or I'm going to paint all their belt buckles. It can be something really, really dumb, but just make it something that feels, even on that number of guys, fairly achievable and, fairly easy. And then just go ahead and do that. And it's going to be easier to get yourself going because it doesn't really seem like that much work. And then you'll get that done, and it probably won't take you all that long, and you'll be feeling good about yourself. And, then at that point, there's a pretty good chance that because you got something done, you're going to be feeling a little bit more motivated, a little bit more inspired. You're going to sort of be back in the groove of painting, and maybe then you'll want to go on and paint something else in all of the figures, or just do more. And that's great, because that just starting out and thinking small has helped you kind of push through your sort of reluctance. But even if that doesn't work out, even if you just paint, say, the shoes, and then you're like, okay, that's enough, I'm done, that's fine too, because at least you will have done something. As long as you keep up that process every single day or whatever, you're still going to be sort of making progress towards getting, your unit done. And don't feel bad in this situation about, simplifying as much as you need to get it done. So, if, as I said, painting pants on all those units feels scary or too much, then say, I'm just going to base coat all the pants. Just break it down to the level that you need to for it to feel achievable and not overwhelming. And that can be a good way to really sort of conquer sort of a project that seems like it's just too massive to contemplate. This is a really, really good one if you're kind of in between projects, you don't really know what to do next, you're not feeling very motivated, or maybe you're already working on something, but you are just kind of stalled and you don't really know what direction to go in. And one really good way to kind of get through that is to go look for inspiration. And that's a pretty broad thing. There's a lot of ways you can do that. I mean, the easiest is, go on your computer, check out YouTube, look at some painting videos, check out some blogs, check out Facebook or other social media. Just try to find examples by, really good painters of some really inspiring, work, or some really cool techniques, maybe that you hadn't thought of doing before. Just look at that, leaf through some magazines like White Dwarf and just, really take in some great miniature painting. And for at least me, that is something that's really helpful. It really gets my juices flowing, and it motivates me to want to go out and try and do something really cool and really good too. I mean, I understand for some people maybe that can be demotivating because you're like, wow, this person is so good, I'll never be that good, I feel terrible now. But, chances are, especially if you're looking online, you're going to find stuff that's good, but maybe not so good that it just terrifies you, or you're going to see stuff where you say, hey, I'm actually better than that person is. I mean, no offense, but sometimes actually looking at sort of other people's work and that's maybe not as good as yours can help you, feel better about yourself and, just get you going. But personally, I find actually looking at, really, really good work by really, really good painters is just super helpful for, just making me try harder. And you can even think more globally than that. I find, for example, that on YouTube, just watching videos of people doing anything creative, like painting or drawing or, sculpting, whatever. It doesn't have anything to do with miniature painting. Just looking at people doing creative things and doing them well can, inspire me or motivate me to want to be creative too in my own way. So that's something you can try, just to kind of help psych yourself up, to go out and do something or just start on a new project if you've been hesitating a little bit. One thing that you're almost certainly going to have an issue with sooner or later when you're painting is just this sense of monotony, that you're just going to get bored with doing sort of the same things the same way all the time. And in that situation, the best solution is just to switch things up. And you can do that radically by totally changing over to painting a different period or different scale or, something like that. So making a really, really radical shift and just sort of working with something quite different for a while. And that can help, you feel refreshed and, get you kind of more motivated again. But, obviously that's not always realistic, or, you've got stuff you need to get done. You can't just go off and always just paint something totally different for a while. But even sort of within your normal sort of routine, there are ways to make things more interesting. For example, a lot of us have sort of fixed paint colors that we like to use to paint certain things. I have certain paints that I always use for leather pretty much and always for skin. But sometimes I get bored with those. Even though they work really well and I like how they look, I just get tired of always using those combinations. So it can be good just to switch that up, use some slightly different colors, not because the old ones are bad, but just because something different can be good. Or you can switch up your technique. Like I always paint faces kind of from dark to light, sort of shade, and then up to highlight. But there's no reason I couldn't go down and start with the brightest color and then add shadows, or start in the middle and add shadows and highlights, just changing that. Or even dumb little things in your routine that you do, like I tend to always paint a model's face first. There's no really good reason for that. It's just sort of an arbitrary thing, and we fall into these patterns of painting. I know other people who always paint the model's pants first. Again, no, necessarily not always a good reason for it. They just do that. But, sometimes just really thinking about what you're doing, saying, no, today I'm going to paint the model's, shoes first or whatever, even just because I need to do it differently. Sometimes that can help. And all these changes, they can sometimes be a good thing. Like maybe this experimentation, these changes, you will kind of find out something that you like better than what you were doing before. You get better results, and so you grow as a painter that way. On the other hand, maybe you try some of these things and you're like, this looks terrible. I was much happier with what I was doing before. But, at least that way you still will have learned, you will have learned something. You'll say, well, I know what I definitely don't want to do. And, it'll just kind of help, your overall sort of skill level. And it'll help hopefully keep you kind of interested more in the entire process. So one thing about miniature painting is it can kind of feel lonely sometimes. It's often something that you just end up doing by yourself. There's nobody else around, and you can get isolated feeling. It's true. So, the obvious solution there is to try to find ways to involve other people into your hobby. Really try to get that social aspect going. That can be extremely motivating, and it can be as simple as just painting in the same room with somebody else who's painting, so you can kind of work together and talk about stuff. Or it can be joining a painting challenge or some kind of project online, so you've got a lot of people sort of working together towards a goal, and you can kind of share your work with one another and get feedback. And that can be really helpful. Or just kind of be a cheerleader for one another to just keep going and keep your focus. And aside from that sort of thing, for me at least, generosity is another component to all this that I find really helpful. And by that I mean, try offering some time to paint someone's miniatures for them. Chances are, if you're even a halfway decent painter, they'll be really thrilled and really grateful that you're doing something like that for them. And, you're probably going to be really, motivated to do your really best work on the models you paint for them. And just sort of keeping the idea in your head of how happy and, satisfied they're going to be when you're able to, give them some finished models. That's a very powerful, force to keep yourself going. And you can even apply that same principle sort of outside of, miniature painting or wargaming circles. For example, my dad is somebody who's notoriously difficult to give presents to. So one year I used my painting abilities to make a special diorama for him for Christmas that I knew would be personal and very meaningful to him. He was on an aircraft carrier during the 1950s when he was in the Navy, and he had really fond memories of that. So I found a carrier pilot and deck crew figure and sort of built a diorama on the flight deck and base and everything. And then I gave him that for Christmas, and he was really touched. And it was because he knew that it was like a really personal, special gift that I made just for him. And when I was working, because that was, what it was, I was also, trying my hardest to make it really special and really good, because, I knew what, my father's reaction would be to that, and that was a motivating factor for me. So, whether you just, so really consider whether it just means hanging out with someone else when you paint, or trying to, use your miniature painting to make other people happy, it can be a really great way to, add extra meaning to your hobby and keep yourself going. Okay, so those are 5 things that I sometimes do when I'm having issues with motivation or focus in my painting. But of course, they're by all means not the only ways to deal with painter's block. And I'm sure you guys have all sorts of other ideas and suggestions for how to get through rough patches. So I'd really like it if you leave those in the comments down below. They're interesting to me and probably helpful to other people as well. And finally, just remember, we're doing this all for fun. If all else fails, just take a deep breath, walk away, and go do something else for a while until you're ready to start painting again. So if you liked this video, please click the like button, share it with your friends, subscribe to this channel if you haven't gotten to do so already, of course. And that's all for now, and I'll be seeing you next time.